Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make mincemeat shortbread bars, and this is what they look like. This has 2 layers of buttery, crisp shortbread sandwiched together with a delicious mincemeat filling. So the first thing you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a 9-inch square, which is 23 centimeter, baking pan. And I'm going to butter it. You could spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. How I butter it is I just melt a little bit of butter, and then I take a pastry brush and brush the bottom and the sides. It's nice with the pastry brush because you can really get in the corners. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so for our batter, if you have a stand mixer like I have, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer for this, or really a shortbread batter, you could just use a bowl with a wooden spoon because we're just mixing the ingredients together. We don't want to whip much air into the shortbread batter. So the first thing you will need, we need butter, shortbreads. You will need 1 cup, 225 grams of butter. Have your butter at room temperature. I'm using unsalted. I prefer the flavor, and that way I can control the salt in the recipe. But if you have a favorite salted butter, then by all means use that. So I'm just going to beat this on medium speed just to get it nice and creamy and smooth. Okay, so whenever you're making a batter, scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl as much as you need to make sure everything gets mixed together. So that we're making actually a brown sugar shortbread. So you will need 1/3 cup, which is 75 grams of firmly packed light brown sugar. And then I'm also adding, for flavoring, 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. So I'm just going to beat this on medium speed just until everything's all mixed together. Okay, we got that mixed together. That a good scrape. So now for our dry ingredients. You need 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And to that, I'm just going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of, I'm using a kosher salt. You could use a table salt. Now, if you use salted butter, just leave the salt out. I'm not adding any baking powder or any leavener like that because we don't want a lot of rise with shortbread. You want it nice and buttery and crisp, flat, more flat. Okay, so now I'm just going to add this and slowly beat it in. Now we don't want a solid ball of dough here. You just want it where it's starting to clump together. Okay, so once everything's all moistened and it starts to come together, that's when you stop. So we are using this batter for both the bottom and the top layer. So what you want to do is take 2/3 of your shortbread batter out of here. Now, if you have a scale, like I always say, this is a perfect time to use it because you will need 370 grams of your shortbread. If you don't have a scale, then what I would do is take all the batter, put it on your counter, and then kind of form it into a log, and then, eyeball 2/3. I mean, it's not that critical, but I find it much easier with a scale. I don't even have to I can just take out like so and leave some in there. So 370 grams. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to now put it into my pan. Oops. I don't just put it all in the center. I kind of distribute it. I find it a little easier to kind of level it off if you don't put all the batter in the center. It takes a lot longer. So just kind of crumble it around. And the reason we're going to bake the bottom layer is so that it'll, once we put the mincemeat in the top layer, it'll keep our baked squares. The bottom layer will be nice and buttery and crisp. So that's why we're pre-baking the bottom shortbread. Okay, so then I'm just using my hands. You could use the back of a spoon to kind of like even it out. Then if you have one of these little handy scrapers, what I do is just use that to smooth it out. Then I can kind of see if it's, and then it also make sure it's nice and even. And I can get the edges nice. But you can just use the back of a spoon for this. Okay. You know, if you take your hand, you can just kind of tell if it's even. That feels good. So now what I do is take a fork, the tines of your fork, and then just prick it all over. That'll help prevent it from puffing up during baking. That's why you don't want to mix a lot of air into your shortbread batter, because we don't want the shortbread to puff up too much during baking. So we're going to pre-bake our bottom layer. I'd say between 16 and 18 minutes. Of course, everyone's oven is a little different. Rotate your pan front to back halfway through baking. I would say 16 to 18 minutes until it's nice, just lightly golden brown on top. Okay, so our bottom layer is done. Leave your oven turned on. As you can see, nice, beautiful golden brown, light golden brown, I should say. So now, you will need, they're mincemeat bars, so you will need 1 1/3 cups, which is 400 grams of mincemeat. Now you can, if you have a favorite like commercially made brand, you can use that. Today I'm actually using my own homemade mincemeat. You can go to the joyofbaking.com website and find it there. This is vegetarian, so no meat. And it's just made with a mixture of candied and dry, all kinds of candied and dried fruits. It's got applesauce, grated apple, like ground spices. So good. Of course, the booze. You've got some brandy and some rum in there. What's not to like? So, take your mincemeat, and if you take commercially made mincemeat, and then you know what I like to do just to perk up the flavors, add a little bit of, you know, rum or brandy to it, and maybe some grated apple or a little lemon juice, and that will really make a commercially made mincemeat a lot better tasting. At least I think so. And save you the work of making your own. I know we're all busy. This is typically made on Christmas. So just kind of evenly spread it around. Oh, it smells so good. I just eat, when I make my own, I just eat it right out of the jar. So now I'm just going to take the back of a spoon. Leave a little bit of a border, but otherwise just evenly spread it out here. Okay, so then remember our leftover shortbread batter. So what we're going to do, we don't want like a solid layer. So we're just going to take little clumps and kind of put it all over, because what you want when it bakes is that you can still see, in places, you can still see the mincemeat underneath. You don't want like a solid layer where you can't see that. I think it looks better where you can get a little, notice your mincemeat. Okay, so almost make sure I get it all there. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then, the pan's hot, so be careful. I want to lightly press that shortbread batter into the mincemeat so it will adhere to it, like so. And then we're going to put it back in the oven, probably 25 to 30 minutes, again, until the top layer of the shortbread is nice golden brown. So 25 to 30 minutes. Okay, so our mincemeat shortbread bars are done. Put your pan on a wire rack, and as you can see, our shortbread on the top is a beautiful golden brown. Smells so good in here with that mincemeat. So whenever you have a pan of shortbread, you need to cut it into individual servings, you need to do it while your shortbread is still quite warm. Because if you let it cool completely to room temperature and try to cut it, it's going to kind of crumble and break on you. So I'm going to let it sit like this for maybe 3-5 minutes, and then when we come back, we will cut it into bars and squares. So to cut our shortbread, you need a knife, and then I just go right in the middle. I'm going to cut this into 16 pieces. Of course, you could cut more, less. So I'm cutting the center and then cut this way, halfway on this. And then I'm just going to rotate the pan and do the same thing in the center. And then what I'm going to do, you don't want to try to, these are very soft, so we have to let them cool right down now and before you try to take your shortbread out of the pan. And then when we come back, we will try one. Okay, so I'm going to use an offset spatula just to get out of the pan. They're still a touch warm. Actually, I like my shortbread bars a little warm, but I like them at room temperature, and I even like them cold. So there we have it. You can see 2 layers of that nice shortbread and then the mincemeat in between. You know what? If they're nice and warm, sometimes for dessert, I like to add a little scoop of vanilla ice cream. So good. I've actually never met a shortbread I didn't like, and I love this one too. I like the brown sugar in it. It adds a nice, almost caramel flavor. And then it's buttery crisp, especially, you know, the bottom layer too, because we did pre-bake that. It makes all the difference. And then, of course, the mincemeat. Try making your own mincemeat, you know. It's easy to make, and it stores well, and it just tastes fantastic. So try this one. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.